Hey guys, my name's Alana. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Mental Health with Alana. If you're new here, please click the red subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure you click the bell notification so you know when I upload videos. I upload videos every Monday and Friday. I do mental health, singing covers, and beauty videos. So if that's something you're interested in, then check out the rest of my channel because I have a load of other videos. I also have a business called Care Boxes by Alana. I create sensory boxes for neurodivergent people and people with disability and mental health issues. If you would like to look at my boxes, then you can go to my Instagram, which I'll put up here, and I'd love for you to check it out. So for today's video, I am going to try to keep this kind of short because I tend to kind of ramble on, and you know, when I'm talking about something I'm really passionate about, it's very hard to kind of keep it condensed. And I have 2 videos that I need to film today, so I can't be here rambling on for 30 minutes. But I wanted to do this video today because somebody had requested it a while ago and I didn't realize. Normally if someone requests a video, I either write it down and add to my list, or I take a screenshot of the comment, but unfortunately for whatever reason I didn't have this comment with me, so I didn't realize. But anyway, this lady I won't say her name just for privacy reasons. I don't know if she wants her name on here or not, but anyway, she requested a video talking about trauma, specifically like childhood trauma and how that can affect you later on and your mental health. And that's a great suggestion. Thank you for suggesting it because I actually didn't even think about making a video on this topic. But yeah, it's super important, and I've never made any sort of video on trauma. So, I suppose trigger warning in a way, but I'm not going into any sort of actual traumatic experiences. I'm going to be very broad, and I'm not going to be mentioning any sort of specific details of anything. So in case you were wondering, you know, I'm just saying that now. So I was trying to think about how to approach this topic, because I do want to keep it quite broad, but I think a lot of the times when we hear the word trauma, we always think about you know, a really severe situation. We tend to judge ourselves all the time and kind of say, well, I didn't go through what this person did, or I didn't, this other person has it worse than me, or, you know, we tend to think about PTSD straight away, which obviously PTSD is from trauma. But I think there's a lot of other traumas that everyone kind of does go through in their life, and those things can add up and actually create problems just as much as maybe somebody who went through a really big trauma. And it's not really something that we should ever be comparing against each other, because it's not really fair on us, because each person experiences things differently, and we all have a different level of threshold of what we can handle, and some people might find one thing really traumatic and another person might not, because it all just depends on the person. So in saying that, I think trauma definitely does impact your mental health, obviously. Specifically if you think about childhood trauma. So I went to a really interesting I don't know what you'd call it, a seminar thing. It was professional development, and it was run by a person who actually kind of knew, didn't know personally, but I knew who she was. She was a psychologist, and she did a whole seminar on grief, and it was, I don't know what it was exactly called. I have the certificate thing somewhere, but it was basically talking about grief and how that impacts a baby, how it impacts a child, how it impacts a teenager, you know, all the different stages through life. And it had a bunch of emotions there. It had all these behaviors that children or, you know, teenagers might start doing, and things like that. And obviously grief is a trauma in itself. So that's an example that I was thinking about. And it was so interesting to see how even at the ages of like 1 year old, how grief or trauma can start coming out in a child. So for me, I suppose I'm not going to be going into any sort of details because this is a quite private thing. But for me, I had a lot of my trauma is surrounding my birth. So my birth was very traumatic for me as a baby, and as for my parents, the whole situation that went on. And basically it was quite traumatic, and a lot of people, a lot of medical people and the general public, but I was very surprised by the amount of the people in the medical field that had a really hard time understanding how something that happened to me as a baby, you know, could affect me later on in life in a really traumatic and distressing way. And I think people don't really seem to understand the effects that trauma or things can have on children, and even as young as like 1 year olds or 6 months, you know, year olds or whatever. Or there is so many studies showing that women, when they have babies in the womb, if there is a lot of like violence going on, if there's a lot of distress, if there is you know, a lot of like arguing or a bunch of different things going on, it actually affects the baby, even at that point when they're still in their mother's womb. So I think that we really have to think about the fact that like trauma does affect children. It just comes out it often comes out in different ways. So some of the biggest ways that trauma can kind of come out when you look at children is often tantrums, really, really bad tantrums. So for me, this was a big one. This is probably the thing that this is what, for me, this is probably the thing of how like the trauma kind of manifested with me, I suppose. So as a really young kid, and then even up until I got older, I would have these, it wasn't, see, looking back, like I can look at this, and even my mom can look at this and be like, that totally wasn't normal. But at the time, I was the firstborn as well. Nobody really understood what was happening, or the effect that it could have on me of the situation. Bit hard to I hope this is making sense. I just don't want to go into the specifics of my situation. So I'm trying to think of how I can say this in a kind of roundabout way. But anyway, so for me, one of the biggest signs of trauma that was coming out was these really, really bad tantrums. I would throw tantrums for up to 3 hours. I would be hysterical. I would be screaming. I would be like, it was bad. It got to the point where my mom would get so upset that she had to go and drop me at my grandma's house and say, can you please deal with her? Because I'm done. Like, not done, but like she was so emotionally spent. And I am naturally a very strong-willed and stubborn person. And that combined with these tantrums, like, they were terrible. I don't know why my mother did this. If I ever find this video, I would be deleting it. But my mom thought it would be a smart idea to film me having one of these tantrums. I think I was probably around the age of 9, maybe younger, I'm not sure. But I remember, I have not seen this for years, and I'm never watching, I do not ever want to watch it ever again. But my mom recorded, don't know why, recorded me having one of these tantrums, and I remember seeing it when I got a bit older, and I was so distressed by it. Like, you could clearly see that there was something really wrong. Like, it wasn't just like, oh, I want a toy, I'm gonna throw a tantrum, oh, I'm tired, or oh, I want to go get a chocolate from the shop. Nah, this was like a major meltdown, like really bad. I don't remember this, but my mom said that I would bang my head against walls all the time, and like self-harming behaviors. Obviously at that point in time, I was not intentionally doing this. Like, it didn't, obviously I was like probably like 1 or 2. Like, you don't have a conceptualized thing of this, but that's what I was doing. So that was another thing that was a big warning sign, is that fact that I was clearly that distressed, that I was self-harming as a child, very young child. And that kind of came out, and then I would, when I would get really distressed and upset and I was crying, I would cry and say things to do with the situation that happened. And this was literally me. I think I was probably around like 4. So I had conscious knowledge at the age of 4. Really as early back as I can remember, I had very conscious knowledge, even as a small child, of what was upsetting me. And it was very misunderstood, because nobody really could grasp the concept that how does a baby, kind of thing, have any sort of mental understanding. But the way I always explained it to people is that, there are some other things that go along with this, but the way I always explain it to people, because medical professionals have a really difficult time understanding this, and I always explain to people and I say, just because they're a baby and they might not have their mind or their cognition isn't really able to obviously understand or grasp the situation, trauma affects the body. Number one, doesn't matter what age you are, trauma impacts the body. Trauma often comes out in the body. There's a really good book that I've almost finished. It's very famous, and it's called oh my gosh, it's gone out of my head. What was the name of it? Oh, The Body Holds the Score. I'm pretty sure that's what the book is called. And it's an amazing book about trauma and how it comes out in the body, basically. And it goes through a large variety of different kind of traumas and how that can manifest in physical ways as well as mental. But yeah, so it comes out in the body. This can come out in health problems. It can come out in mental health problems. Like I was saying, like as a young kid, obviously I was self-harming without really consciously realizing that. And there were, there were probably more behaviors that I was doing that wasn't that normal either. And even as a child, I'm not going to go into a bunch of things, but like even as a child, my mom had quite bad postnatal depression because of what had happened with my birthing situation and other things. And so she wasn't actually really able to look after me much. And so apparently I would go into her room and I'd just stand there watching her, like while she was in bed all the time. And yeah, things like that. And so those type of things, you don't realize that over time that causes, like, what's the right word? That causes attachment issues. Attachment is a whole nother thing that can be another video because it's too much to go into, but that causes like attachment issues, bonding issues, problems, I think for me the thing that the trauma caused me to not be able to express my grief and my feelings and emotions in a normal way, because I was like a child, very young child, who could not process the amount of grief and trauma that had happened. And also, obviously, also my parents were going through their own thing, but they were adults, so they could, even though what the thing that went on was very traumatic and upsetting, they were able to process that a lot better. Whereas with me, because I was a child, I was not able to process that ever, and my parents didn't understand that the extent of the issue, and when those red flags were coming up to signify trauma, they did not pick up on it and didn't know that was something that should have been maybe looked at a bit earlier on. And that I mean, I've gone through a lot of different type of traumas, but I'm using this one as an example. That one specifically, even though now I'm like 24 or whatever, I still have repercussions from that trauma. Like, I still have there are still things that trigger me because of that trauma, and things that make it, like, there are some topics that I cannot listen to or talk about because it's related to my trauma, and it makes me really distressed. And even though I've worked on it a bit, like kind of on my own, it's still something that I don't think it will ever go away. The amount of the distress it causes me, I don't think that will ever change, because trauma doesn't just get resolved and then you don't feel anything towards it, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so that's kind of one example, which is grief. But then other traumas can be things like bullying. So I'm only basing this video off my experiences because I don't want to ever make a assumption about anyone else's trauma. But other things can be like bullying. So for me, I experienced very severe bullying throughout most of primary school and even in high school. Major like rejection from people and just bullying, you know, people lying about me, I mean, in primary school, it even started to get physical. There was this girl who would like try to punch me, and it was just terrible. And all the trauma that I had, like, just from that bullying, all the situation with that caused me major like problems with relationships and my self-worth and self-esteem was so bad, because I already had mental health issues, and then plus having people bully me to that extent for such a long time, it really took a toll on my mental health as well as my self-esteem, my self-worth, and how I viewed myself. And it caused me so many problems with relationships. And I do believe I have borderline personality disorder, and I do believe that because of these traumas that I have had in my life, that is most likely what's caused the borderline personality disorder, because those things happened to me at such a young age. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that, like, trauma definitely does impact you, but specifically childhood trauma really affects you, and people don't seem to notice it until you start to get older. And then all this stuff starts coming out, like behaviors that aren't considered normal, and maybe things that are very disordered. And unfortunately, sometimes it's not until, I know for me, it wasn't until I was even an adult that I started to realize that I actually had a bunch of stuff that was really traumatic that no one ever validated, and nobody ever actually said to me, wow, that must have been really hard. No one had ever said that because they didn't understand. The situation was a very unique situation, so that's why I'm also putting that in. It was quite a unique, unusual situation, so it's been even harder for me because people just don't understand it. It's very hard for them to grasp. So I hope that this has kind of answered your question to the person who requested this video. I was trying to decide like how to come at this topic, because it's hard to make just one like video on it because it's so broad and I could say so many things about it, and there's just so many different topics like underneath the whole category of trauma, obviously. But I hope that gave some understanding of how like childhood trauma can kind of come out. I really wish I had access to that piece of paper that had like how trauma can come out at different ages. Maybe I can find something on the internet. I'm not sure where this psychologist got the resource from. It was so good. It really changed my perspective on trauma, and how important it is to really validate and intervene with children when they're experiencing trauma. It's really important to get a professional in, or get a support person or somebody to help them process it, because the earlier you work on it, the better. When things are left, it often gets worse over time, and it can become even harder. And as an adult, you put a lot of judgments on the trauma as well. And I think that it would be a lot easier to unpack it if you did it when you're a bit younger, opposed to maybe waiting 20, 30 years or whatever it is, because then you've had all that time to overthink it, to make all these judgments on yourself, on other people. You don't, you find it a lot harder to talk about. So I hope this was helpful in a way. I'm sorry if it was a little bit all over the place. I was trying to explain my situation, but in a way that was very non-detailed, because I did want to bring it up a bit, but it's not something that I am comfortable like putting online. And I also have to consider the privacy of other family members in this situation. It's not just me, it's other people as well who have been through this trauma. So obviously, like, I'm being really careful about what I say here. So if you see me trying to figure out what to say, it's because I'm trying to like think of how to say it. But anyway, after all that rambling, thank you for watching the video. I hope this helped. If you have any other questions, if you want me to do like a deep dive into trauma, and I can do some more research and stuff like that, and make some separate videos maybe on different topics, and I totally can do that. So just let me know down below. But if you do request these videos, they might take a bit longer because I have to really sit and think about this, and I don't want to ever say the wrong thing or come at it in the wrong, I don't know, the wrong way. So, because it's just such a touchy thing. And even I don't have a full understanding of it yet either. So I don't really want to be like giving people the wrong advice, if you know what I mean. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video.